So I got OpenMPT up here, but that's not the first step. The first step, we got to record the sample in Audacity. So I'm going to load up Audacity real quick. You can sample a VST. You can sample an IRL instrument like a cello or a piano. But I've got a Proteus 2 orchestral down over here. So I'm going to be sampling from that. I'm going to choose recording device, microphone. So that's kind of as loud as it goes. So I'm going to export this as a wave. Proteus 2 orchestral 11 legato STR. So that is like a raw wave file. It's got both channels here. It's not optimized at all for SNES. So now we load it into OpenMPT. First off, you can use Shift-L or alternately Shift-R to discard one of the channels because you want this to be mono. Delete any silence at the beginning. And one thing we would want to do is resample it because this is recorded by default at CD quality audio, so that's 44 and 100 hertz. 44,100. That is way too heavy for SNES. Like, technically you could do that, but it's also going to affect how high a pitch you can go when you're using the sample itself. So luckily OpenMPT comes with a built-in resampling tool. You're usually going to want to, first of all, use the tuning fork. Make sure you're actually at middle C, which thankfully this is. That tuning fork can tune any sound to a C. Go to resample. You're going to want to either put in 32,000 or 16,000. Those are pretty common values for SNES samples. If you go, like, say for example, down to 8,000, you're going to notice a drop in quality. This isn't always required. In fact, you probably shouldn't do that because the frequency it's recorded at will affect how high and low you can go when you're using the sample in EBMUSED or any other SNES music tool. So I think I'm going to go, maybe I'll try 16,000 and see if it sounds okay. Yeah, that sounds decent. Now I have to put loop points. So loop points with string samples are kind of complicated because there's no clear waveform where you can look at it and then go, that's clearly the beginning, that's clearly the end. You just kind of like go in here, notice how I'm selecting a small area and then pressing the space bar. This zooms in. I'm going to set this as the loop and hear what it sounds like. You can drag the points back and forth. You're going to want it to be pretty short. The heavier a sample is, the less memory you have for other samples. A trick you can use to make your loop point cleaner, because notice that there's a little bit of click there, is you can use the sample crossfader, which you get by that button. You can change how many samples you use for fading, and slide either to constant volume or constant power depending on what sounds cleaner. Usually I do a little bit of trial and error. That sounds much better. It actually sounds like a SNES sample, like a Final Fantasy string sample. So now I'm deleting all the excess stuff at the end of the sample. And now I'm going to export it back out as a wave. So now I can load up any DAW and start an instance of C700. Technically, OpenMPT is a DAW. I'm going to use it just because I'm already here. I loaded C700 as an instrument, so now I can go to the Instruments tab, click on this, and now I have C700. So let's find the WAV file. There it is. Drag the WAV file into C700. Let's listen to it to see if it's okay. One thing that I might have wanted to do is cut this fade in part here and then just used ADSR later on. But oh well, I didn't this time. So now, save sample, and I'm going to call it the same thing. I'm going to call it Parodies to Orchestral 11 Legato String. A nice descriptive file name goes a long way. Now we have this BRR file and this .smpl file, which is useless, we can get rid of it. So now, this here is the BRR player. This is a tool that you can use to tune BRR samples. So let's load up the original sample here in OpenMPT, which we know is at middle C. And then go over here. It's harder to tell with string samples because it's a more complicated waveform, but that's pretty close. So O3, DO are the multiplier and sub values you'll want to use in your config.txt file when you put this into either CoilSnake or the instrument packer. If I wanted to use this in the instrument packer or CoilSnake, what I would do is let's take an example for this song that I never actually finished. First, we'll drag the BRR file in the folder. Then I'm going to copy the file name and put it in the config.txt. And I'm just going to copy this stuff here. This here is the ADSR. This here is the tuning. The last two numbers of the tuning. So as we found, multiplier is O3 and sub is D0. Oops. So now we know when we use it and when we load it into EBMusid, it'll be tuned to C. To get ADSR values, you'll want to use an ADSR calculator, which I have here, but you can get various different places. This is adapted from the AddMusicK README files. So you can do all kinds of interesting things with this. Usually what I do is I clear that, I clear that, and maybe have a short fade out. So you copy it and then paste it here. Now you have your ADSR. Something else I like to do is I like to have a version of the sample that goes to infinity, that does not fade at all. So I make a duplicate that doesn't fade, and then I have a version that does fade. And so in EBMusid, you can play a note with the infinity one, and then if you switch instruments to the one that does fade, it will fade. So you can have a note play and then switch instruments, and then it's like you're gradually fading the volume with a volume command. But you're not, you're using ADSR. So that's how I make custom samples. I hope this is helpful. Thank you for making it this far in the video. Hopefully I'll make more things like this in the future. This is exciting.